Hello and welcome to India Today Global, the newest international news channel in India. We'll be bringing you global news from India, from an Indian perspective, how it matters to India, and we'll be taking the major big India's news or the achievements of India global. This is a platform where we will be trying to ensure that there are no false narratives or propaganda, that we actually cover news as is. There are important countries and we'll not fall in between the chasm of bilateral bickering, but ensure that we put everything in perspective. We are coming to you with a great team, fantastic reporters, journalists who will be putting out great stories for you to understand how foreign policy in India really works. But also, we are going live on a very exciting day. It's a day when the new government in India has assumed charge, although the portfolios for ministries is yet to be announced, but the oath-taking ceremony yesterday was a very, very important day for India. It's Modi 3.0, where 7 countries were invited, 7 very important countries, emphasizing on Prime Minister Modi and the Indian government's neighborhood first policy, as also its Sagar diplomacy. The portfolios have not been announced yet, so we do not know who's going to take charge of the very important ministry that we will be tracking very closely. That's the External Affairs Ministry. But whoever takes charge will be turning up at South Block. Now, who is at South Block is my colleague Shashank Mattu, a very prominent face in the foreign policy circuit. He was with the Mint and now joins us live from South Block. A very good morning, Shashank. It's an exciting day for India Today Global. We are going global with the news from India. The biggest news is that of the oath-taking ceremony that took place yesterday. Today, you're outside South Block. Explain to us exactly what's going to happen. I believe that former External Affairs Minister Dr. Jaishankar could be calling on the dignitaries even before the portfolios are assigned, because we do not know who is going to be the External Affairs Minister, although it would be highly unlikely that it's not going to be Dr. Jaishankar.
Absolutely. So I'm standing in front of South Block. Right behind me, South Block, for our viewers, is where the Ministry of External Affairs sits. It's, of course, this is a very high-powered part of the city. You have right next to the Ministry of External Affairs, you have the Ministry of Defense. And in front of me right now is, and I'll just turn around very quickly for the benefit of the viewers, I also have the Ministries of Finance and Home Affairs. And all the top cabinet ministers are expected to take their place in their new ministries today. So this is going to be a very, very busy street in a short period of time. But yes, the new External Affairs Minister is expected to take charge today. Of course, we aren't sure who exactly will be taking over as the Minister of External Affairs, but the smart money, of course, is on the man who has helped the ministry for the last 5 years and who has been a diplomat since 1977, who is, of course, Dr. S. Jaishankar. So what I can say is that I saw some members of the EAM's office sort of head in there just a little while ago. So, of course, I think things are getting ready there for the new External Affairs Minister to take charge. But absolutely, you're right that, this is the swearing in. Of course, we're coming on the back of the swearing in ceremony. Yesterday with the Prime Minister, you had really all the leaders of the neighborhood in attendance at in New Delhi. You had leaders of Bangladesh, of Nepal, of Maldives, the Vice President of the Seychelles, Mauritius. So you really had some of the most powerful leaders in the neighborhood and coming to the swearing in, which really does emphasize that it is neighborhood first for India. And as you mentioned, the new External Affairs Minister is expected to call.
Okay, we seem to have lost the connection with Shashank Mattu. We'll try connecting with him again. But then, like Shashank Mattu said, it's a very, very exciting time for India, and a very important. We are at a very important juncture where we are looking at how India is going to engage the world. Now, this is a different government. It is a government that really is coming with a coalition with coalition partners. It's not a single majority. And so we will have to see whether if uh, the policies of Prime Minister Modi is going to continue as is, or are we looking at uh, a more different, nuanced approach to how foreign policy will be conducted now. Also, every ministry has ministers of state as well. Again, most of them, when we see the important ministries on Raisina Hill, which is the Foreign Ministry, Finance Ministry, Defense, and Home. They do accommodate other parties as well. It has happened in coalition governments in the past. We'll have to wait and see whether if there is going to be a coalition partner party that will also be represented at Raisina as ministers of state. But important over here is that we had a few very important senior leaders who took oath yesterday. Shivraj Singh Chauhan, Rajnath Singh, Amit Shah, Dr. Jaishankar himself, Nirmala Sitharaman, Hardeep Puri. So they are very important leaders who took oath, and we again will have to see how India is going to conduct its foreign policies. But then there are big challenges. We'll try getting Shashank again here from South Block, because for our viewers, it's always interesting to tell them exactly what the lay of the land is when it comes to Raisina Hill. It's an important area. It's a very important place where the most important decisions of this country really take place. But then let's go back to the countries that were invited yesterday. The countries that were invited were very, very crucial. We're looking at countries with whom we have very good ties, but some with whom we are not absolutely on the best or the most cordial note with. Who are those countries, or which are those countries? We are talking about the Maldives. Let's begin with the Maldives. We've had a lot of problems in the recent past with the Maldives. Muidzu won his entire presidency on an India out campaign. He continued with ensuring that Indian military personnel who were deployed in the Maldives very critically to ensure that medical services and emergency services are provided to the people of Maldives by flying those Dornier aircraft and helicopters. But those military personnel, although they did not return the helicopters and the aircraft, but the military personnel were asked to leave the Maldives. And after that, we're looking at Prime Minister Modi making that effort, the outreach to the Indian Ocean archipelago nation, to ensure that the most important area, which is the waters around India, are secure. There is a lot of forward movement and influence of China in the Maldives, and to ensure that there is balance that is created, because the Maldives geostrategically is very important for India, that India continues to reach out. Having said that, when it comes to really helping out the financial aid, the economic aid that these countries require across or around India, India becomes the first responder. And in all probability, the invitations clearly show the messaging of India, that for India, India's neighbors are going to be the most important, and they will be a priority area in the foreign policy as well. And that's why President Muidzu was there. There are visuals of President Muidzu and Prime Minister Narendra Modi, who sat next to each other when the President of India hosted a banquet for the visiting dignitaries. You had Ranil Wickremesinghe to his right and Muidzu to his left. So clearly, the messaging over there absolutely in place. But we'll have to wait and see how the Maldives is going to respond to this special gesture. Again, Shashank Mattu is back with us. So let's just go to Raisina and show you the lay of the land, so you know exactly where these powerful ministries are and who really takes charge of which office. We know that we will have to wait for the portfolios to come in. The moment the portfolios are announced, you will see all these ministers drive into the offices to assume charge. Shashank, if I could come back to you, explain to
Right.
us, show us the lay of the land, just show us Raisina Hill to our viewers, let them understand where these ministers actually sit and what are the decisions that they take in those ministries, powerful space, Raisina Hill.
Absolutely. It's really, whenever we talk about anything of power or significance happening in India, we talk about Raisina Hill. And this is where really India's most powerful ministries sit. Of course, like I said, right behind me is the South Block, the Ministry of External Affairs sits there. If you just sneak past there, you will, of course, head off to the Prime Minister's office as well. So the Prime Minister also sits here. So this makes it a very high powered block. Just behind me, if you look in this direction right there, you have the Ministry of Defense. Of course, a little sunny right now, but if in general, you can also see in the distance the flags of the various services. You have, servicemen and women walking around here. So the neighbors really. You have the Defense Ministry and the Foreign Ministry. If you can look behind me, in fact, I'll just walk over around here, and you can see Rashtrapati Bhavan with its iconic spire right behind me. I think you can. That's where, of course, all the dignitaries were for this grand banquet. Whereas you were mentioning President Muizu and Prime Minister Narendra Modi were sitting together. So, of course, it was hosted by President Murmu. Behind me, you have North Block, which is, of course, home to the Finance Ministry as well as the Home Ministry. So it's an extraordinarily powerful place. You have the president, you have really the four top cabinet members, members of the cabinet committee on security here. So it really just an amazingly powerful place. And if you just walk down, so Raisina Hill, we call it a hill. You may not be able to see it, but if you go right down there, there's of course a dip. And then you go down, and if you take a left, you have the old Parliament building. So really, just an incredible amount of history in this part of the world, in this part of Delhi, and of course, for the longest time, it is where, really since British times, India has based its government and its most powerful institutions. So all these powerful ministries are very, very close to each other, and we will also, of course, be seeing a lot of activity here because, as I mentioned before, many of the ministers are expected to take charge of their ministries today. So we'll see who exactly is in charge of which ministries, which really one of the most powerful places in the country.
Okay. Again, before we wrap this session, because we do know, Shashank, that it'll take a while for the cabinet portfolios to be announced and then for the ministers to really assume charge. The news that's coming in is that the former External Affairs Minister, Dr. Jaishankar, will nonetheless be calling on the 7 foreign dignitaries. He has been in touch with them. He has been engaging them for quite some time. So it is unlikely that he will not meet them before they leave, and they all would be leaving today. So he is expected to meet the foreign dignitaries irrespective of whether the cabinet portfolios come in or not. Having said that, Shashank, before we end this session, let's just talk about the big challenges for India. The big challenges for India is around the neighborhood when we talk about Nepal, the Maldives, a bit of Bangladesh as well, although
Right.
most of them we have great ties with. But the fact that all these countries were invited, keeping one country in focus, and that's the biggest challenge for India as to how to counter the increased Chinese influence in these countries, in the region, as also the aggressive posturing by China.
Absolutely. The big issue really is, of course, China. You see it in every single country in the neighborhood, whether it's Nepal, whether it's Bangladesh, the Maldives. Every time you look at some of the tensions that India has been having with its neighbors, China is a considerable part of that equation. We, of course, at one point in time, India used to be used to this idea that it was the predominant power, the preeminent power in the neighborhood. It was the first responder, to use a phrase that you just mentioned, to almost every crisis. Of course, India has had to get used to a new reality where China is increasingly a player. China's economic and military heft is increasingly a challenge for India because now our neighbors understand that they have a second choice, that they can reach out to other major countries that are also close by in the neighborhood for financial resources, largesse. So there's always going to be a little more competition. But I think that what Indian diplomacy has done over the last couple of years is that it has become much, much more comfortable with the idea that, look, China is here to stay. We're going to have to compete with them. We're going to have to work with them. We're going to have to work with our neighbors to figure out a new compact that makes India's relationship with them work in the 21st century, where there's a lot more competition. You have powers like not just China, but even America coming into the Indian Ocean as the Indo-Pacific grows in more importance for them. So you also have America coming in. So Delhi's going to have to get used to this idea that you compete.
Okay, we're losing his audio yet again. We'll try to connect with Shashank in just a bit. But before we do that, again, he was talking about the challenges that India is faced with. This is a new government, coalition government, so a lot of balancing. But yet, when it comes to foreign policy, we've always known that there's a continuum, that India's interests will always be held high and will be top priority, not just for the Bharatiya Janata Party, but all other allies within the NDA coalition as well. And that there will be no compromise on that front. Keeping that in mind, we will focus on how India is going to move forward. This is India's moment in many ways than one. We are looking at a trajectory where India is the growth story. We're talking about India at a time when India has not only found its place on the global map, it is a leading voice on the global map as also for the global south. How we cover these stories, how we look at them, and how we focus on them is something that we are going to take a lot of pains in ensuring that there is absolutely unbiased and a coverage of India's policies towards the world, as also how the world has now started looking at India. On that note, this is the first time we're going live, so we will keep coming back to you for all the latest developments. For now, we do know that former External Affairs Minister will be calling on the 7 foreign dignitaries. A lot of important exchanges took place. Stay tuned to India Today Global, because this is where we'll be breaking all the news for you as and when they happen, bringing you details about the conversations, bringing you details about where India's headed and the important visits or meetings that are to take place in the coming future. Thank you so much for joining us here on India Today Global.